Hi, my name is Miraj and welcome to the Healing Journey. This is the channel where I record and discuss my self-healing and my journey to learn to love myself for whom I am after having had a complete breakdown of identity and character at October 12th. I'm recording this video as on the same day I recorded the second video, and the topic of this video will be about how I got out of the well of despondency that I was in last week, and perhaps also the beginning of this week. So hopefully this might be helpful to some who watches it either now or in the future, who also feel themselves, as I did last week, being shackled to the ground of a well that keeps increasing and increasing in height and size and thickness, just laying down there, shackled to the ground, looking up as the light slowly disappears away, knowing that or feeling that if you don't start working on the lock to the chains soon and start climbing, you will be left there forever to rot and die away, but simultaneously also feeling that you have no possibility to do this whatsoever, because how could you? You are in the bottom of that well of misery. Anyhow, let me just put out some caveats before, which is to say that what I did obviously might not work for everyone, but I will try to give some reasons for why some of what I did has more universal application. That's the first caveat. The second caveat is that I'm incredibly lucky and I'm incredibly privileged in one way, because I have the most wonderful wife and I'm doing a PhD in Sweden in philosophy, and so I have a stable job, and I could also afford to work less hard during my first week of collapsing, because of the fact that the previous week I've been working super hard, and the previous just weekend before, the 5th of October, I've been working all weekend. Anyhow, so with those two caveats out, what are some tips and tricks perhaps, or some strategies? Yeah, some strategies for what to do when laying in that oh so ever scary and terrifying well of no escape and suffering. Well, I think the first thing to do is to accept that, or try your very hardest to accept that this is gonna be your situation for the coming days. You don't want to try to look too far into the future. You want to try to not look more than one day ahead, right? And just accept that you're feeling this bad and you're gonna be feeling this bad. And it's okay to feel bad. We all in our society struggle so much with feeling bad because our society is oriented around trying to be happy, trying to feel good, and in orienting ourselves in that way, we make it antithetical to feel bad. We feel that if we feel bad, if we feel really bad, we must have really failed. We must be really worthless and useless because we are failing at what society tells us is the purpose of life, which is to be happy. And perhaps we especially feel bad because we feel that we are getting further away from being on a path to happiness, during each second passing while we feel bad. So anyhow, the first thing is to try to accept that you feel bad and don't resist it. I think there's good reasons for believing that much of feeling bad comes from resisting your emotions and resisting what they're telling you. And notice crucially that as I tell you this, I have barely just figured that out, and I did not figure it out on my own. which leads me to my second point. Try to get help. Try to get help sooner rather than later. And for me, I'm very lucky. I had a good therapist from before who I immediately re-established contact with, because as the reason I did it immediately was because I really felt on the verge of dying, on the verge of not wanting to live anymore, and I also had some money to spend. That therapy is rather free for me because I live in Sweden, and I also had some money to spend on seeing like a more body-based stress therapist who could help me release some of my stress and tension. Now, of course, most people in the world aren't this lucky. So what to do if you're one of those not so lucky people as I am? Well, I think what other things I did was I also started looking around a lot on YouTube for help, and I listened a lot to, and I'm listening a lot to, still trying to learn from Teal Swan, is a lady. On YouTube, you can just Google Teal Swan, and she has a lot of useful videos for when you feel at your worst, and some actually very, very like practical tips and guidelines for how to stop feeling your worst. And specifically, if you also, as I do for now, have the ringing in your ear, the tinnitus, then Julian Cowan Hill on YouTube is very, very useful. I mean, he really like brought me back from the brink of completely losing it with the tinnitus. I really thought I was gonna have it for life, and now I feel like more hopeful that it will go away, and I feel more hopeful even than that even if I have it for life, I can learn to manage and cope with it, although I feel far from having met the threshold where I can say that I feel truly hopeful about said propositions. But anyway, so if you can't get like help by seeing a physical therapist or something like that, try YouTubing around, because there's a lot of help to be found there, and I just said my 2 recommendations. And the third strategy is like the inverse of the second one, which is to say that don't Google the negatives. Don't Google and try to hang out on forums where there's a lot of like negative people and where there's a lot of just people wallowing in their despondency and feeling at their worst and wanting to vent and complain about that. I think that is a really bad idea, because you will see a lot of posts like, I have had anxiety and panic for 2 years. I lost my entire job and my family. I know how to get better. I've tried everything. Nothing works for me. And then you will see many more posts like that. And that will make you feel that perhaps there's no way out of this. And that will make you feel worse. I think this is especially important and particularly true for people who suffer with tinnitus, because the tinnitus community online is just the worst, in the sense that it really is like gathered around a bunch of people who believe that there's nothing to can be done, and that tinnitus will only get worse throughout your life, and that it will ruin your life basically, and the only way out is suicide. And obviously that's not true. Tinnitus can get better. For many people experience tinnitus throughout their lives, and it goes away. And I mean, I can't really, I don't think I'm the person to speak more about this particularly, but as I said, Julian Cowan Hill speaks a lot about this, and I recommend you watch him if you suffer from tinnitus. I think the fourth strategy is to reach out to people and to have like, loved ones and friends and family, to try to reach out to them and just get them to hang out with you a bit, be there a bit with you, just come, perhaps touch your back, touch your head, tell you everything's gonna be okay. And again, as I say this, I know I'm incredibly lucky and privileged to have my wife, and many out there are not so lucky and they might have no one, and I relate to that because I really for a while used to feel like I had no one when I felt bad, and I felt very bad at many points in my life before. But I still think it's like kind of good to try and reach out to people whom are your friends or have been your friends. And if you have no one, then perhaps the thing to do is, and I don't know, is to go on one of these forums and make a post about how you're feeling so bad and why you're feeling so bad. And that might get you some reassurance, and that might get you some just like human contact and connection. Or try to do this on social media. But if you're going to do this, I think it's super important that you don't try to read other negative posts. And also, it's super important that you try to like finish your post by saying, I could really use some reassurance. I could really use someone to tell me everything is going to be okay. Because then I think you will get way more of that. Now, the fifth thing, a fifth strategy, I think, is to really like clean up your diet immediately. I mean, I stopped taking like caffeine and sugar, and I started salting my food way less, and I cut down on the carbs. And that really helped because all of those things inflame the body and make the body more stressed. And you're already in a state where your body basically believes that you're dying because that's how bad you feel. So take away all the things that can further aggravate the body's perception that it's under attack, so to speak, because your body's going to be under plenty attack from the stress and anxiety you're feeling already. And moreover, I also think that taking away this side of stuff and eating healthy actually starts to make you feel better. I mean, I think there's like some science out there that supports that or whatever, but this is just another strategy for what to do when feeling bad. And I guess it is worth saying, or like I want to say strategy 6, but perhaps this is rather strategy 2.1, is that work with the tips and tricks that you get from the counseling or the therapist or the YouTube therapist or the YouTube healers or the spiritual guidance people out there. Just like don't just read them and watch them. That's good, and do that. And but also try to actually work with what they're saying. Like write the lists that they tell you to write, do the exercises that they tell you to do. Because even if you don't believe them, this will just give you something to do, and just having something to do makes you feel better. And but often it will also just make you feel better, and at least even if you don't believe in them, so like you will get the practical bodily effects of the purposes or the teleology of these practices. As for number 6, and this is not sort of universal, it's all of the strategies and tips here are of course so context dependent. I mean, like, I don't know, if you're feeling bad for having like gotten like assaulted or sexually abused, then I don't know if any of this works. I hope it works. I don't really know what to do, but I think anyhow, another strategy is to really try to cut out like the bad stuff in your life. And no, I don't only mean bad food, but I also mean like bad people. I think like don't. And that can be also people who are not necessarily bad, but who are just very draining. Because when you're in this condition, you have no energy, right? So if you have a good friendship with someone, but that friend is someone who really just loves to offload all of their suffering to you, or like to get reassurance, or just likes to vent, and but who likes to do very little emotional load-bearing work themselves, then I think perhaps say to that friend that for now you can't like meet them, or try not to meet them. And I think also just try not to read like politics less, the news less, because our world is horrible and it's cruel and filled with malevolence. And I think that staying away from that is also completely necessary, like for lowering all these like bad feelings in your body, because otherwise you will read the news and you will read, I don't know, about like the 500,000 people that died from COVID yesterday, and you might feel that might reactivate your anxiety and stress and adrenaline and will make you feel even worse. And also, and I know this might sound a bit cheesy, but try to like not watch like really violent movies and play really violent video games, because that tricks your subconscious into believing that it is in this like fight or flight mode. And especially if you're like me, you had this like complete stress anxiety breakdown, then that's super bad. But I think also if you're just suffering from this in this strictly depression, well, that's where you are, then I think it's not good to watch things and do that just really trigger this sense of violence and you being under attack. Instead, try to watch heartwarming stuff, heartwarming movies, listen to heartwarming music, and more stuff like that. Oh, I should also mention quickly before finishing off, because I think that's all like my last strategy and tips, that another person you can watch on YouTube, apart from Teal Swan and Julian Cowan Hill, is Jordan Peterson. I don't agree with everything on his politics and views on gender. You know, I consider myself to be quite a big feminist at this point. But you know, he has a lot of good tips on how to deal with anxiety and stress and stuff like that. So it's good to get like a bit wide variety of information. And so also check him out, and he might have some useful stuff for you. And let me finish off by this. Now, I went from feeling on the verge of suicide to on waking up 5 days in a row with panic attacks that lasted 3 hours, and having more panic attacks throughout the day, to, you know, doing, I don't know, like a lot, for lack of better description, a lot better, in the sense that now I mean, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I feel bad and I have like high anxiety, but the anxiety is not as high as it was yesterday, nor is it as high as it was the day before yesterday. And some days, like today, I could even like fall asleep again. So I guess like I got out of the well in one way very quickly. And I think that has to do with the fact that A, as I already said, I'm incredibly privileged. But B, I've been there many times before in that well, and I have like powered out of it before, so I know like something about how it works. I guess like I have some neural pathways that are attuned to getting out of that well. But for many that might not be the case, and you might be in that well for a long time, 2-3 weeks. And again, I think, as I said, that's okay. Just try to focus on the next day, not even the next day, try to just focus on the next moment, the next hour. And above all, in focusing on just this, having this very short-term perspective, be kind to yourself and realize that it's not bad to feel bad. It's okay to feel bad. It's part of the human experience, and reality, life is not a puzzle to be solved, but it is something to be experienced, and you are experiencing it right now. And this will pass, and you will get better. And I'll try to lay out some strategies that might be helpful, but above all, be kind to yourself. I think that really helped me to be kind to myself and allow me to feel bad and realize that feeling bad is part of the human experience, and is also specifically trying to communicate something important to you in the situation. And I guess that's all for this video, and I hope perhaps it was helpful to someone out there.